If someone doesn't have a calendar scheduler for their podcast interview, I'm not doing it.
It speaks volumes. I don't want to go back and forth with you in email. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to make Trina do it. And time zones
Mhm.
alone, I'm just like, no, who wants to calculate this?
Today's guest makes over $1 million a year in revenue just because of all the business collaborations she does every year. In fact, Jordan has collaborations down to so much of a science that she has created an AI-based app and network that not only generates ideas for collaborations, but also drafts a pitch email that is likely to result in a mutually profitable and beneficial collaboration. In this episode, Jordan dives deep into everything it takes to find the right people to collaborate with, what to say to them when you're pitching them, and everything in between. So if you're interested in having a collaboration to grow your business, this is going to be a great episode for you. If you're new here, hi there, my name is Sewa Ajaypele, and I host the She's Off Script podcast where we help you create your own unique blueprint for business success. Before we dive into this episode, don't forget to share this episode with someone who could find the information helpful. All right, with that, let's go ahead and dive in.
Jordan Gill, welcome back to She's Off Script. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me again. Always a pleasure. Always such good interview questions, which I really appreciate as someone who's been on quite a few podcasts. And yeah, I'm excited to dive into this topic. It's near and dear to my heart.
I appreciate it. And we haven't had anyone back on the show, but you are constantly evolving and doing things in very unique ways, this time around with collaboration. So, but for anyone who hasn't heard of you before or, heard the first episode that we did together, could you share who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I'm Jordan Gill, and I am the head honcho over at Systems Saved Me, and been in business a little over 7 years, and had, like you mentioned, many, many iterations of what I've done and what I've been known for. And I think that's part of my message, is that you can really change the game and evolve as you wish, as long as you keep your values intact, because that's why people will trust me regardless of what I decide to go into, is because the thread of my values is in everything that I do. So, I want to be an example of that. I want to help others do that, because evolution is a part of business. Change is everywhere. Change is the only constant, as they say.
Hmm.
And so, for me, change being the only constant, another part of that has been relationships that I've built since the very beginning of my business. And I have been a collaborator since the beginning of my business. And while in 2023, it has kind of become a bit trendy, I will say, it's something that has been the way of doing business since literally the beginning of time. It's like, you go down the street and like, oh, like I don't have apples, but Bob has apples down the street. And then you go down to Bob and he's got your apples, right? So I recognize there's a lot of like flashiness, and again, another part of what I enjoy is the AI stuff that's going on right now, which is very, very flashy and new. I also like the confidence and the tried and trueness of relationships and collaborations, because I know that's going to work, because it's literally worked since the beginning of time. So yeah, and I live in Dallas, Texas, with my bonus son and my husband. And I'm a jigsaw puzzle lover, which I love to share, for all of those other puzzlers out there, who love to do that too.
So, Jordan, on average, I heard that you secure more than 50 collaborations a year.
Yes.
Let's let that settle in. 50. So we're going to dive into how you were able to make that happen. But as a business owner, why have you decided to focus on collaboration so much, as opposed to
Yeah.
maybe all the other ways you could grow your business?
Yeah, it was in a lot of conversations. I'm a big direct messenger, in my Instagram. I'm having conversations constantly in Voxer and different places. And it was showing again and again and again. People were like, I have the funnel set up, or I have the service set up, or I have the offer set up. How do I get people like to be doing it right with me?
Hmm.
And for me, for a really long time, I didn't even really recognize that I was doing collaborations
Yeah.
to bring in people. It was such a natural part of just who I am and how I operate that I was like, oh, like do more collaborations. And then they were like, well, where do I find collaborations? And I was like, well, that is interesting because the notion is either you have to pay 30 to 50K to be in these big masterminds of these big names and all this stuff. That's how you find collaborations. Or you have to hire a PR person, which is really good for like the Good Morning Americas and Forbes and like the really big named stuff. I definitely do not want to take away their shine. And for a lot of the guest teaching or guest podcasting or list swaps or things like that, like that can be very much done one-to-one, and also doesn't need necessarily somebody to do that setup for you unless you want to pay for that. But marketing is expensive, and like it's not getting any less expensive. So being able to call on people that you know and that know you, and figuring out a way to have a win-win when it comes to marketing is so underrated, and for some reason hasn't been talked about really again until I feel like this year, because everyone realized how expensive marketing is. But how I found the 50 was just I'm one of those people that just like I will be flipping through Instagram stories and I will just respond to whatever stories you have going on. Or if you have something really cool happening, I'll email you and be like, this was so dope. Like, great job. Like, amazing. Just over here fangirling. Right. And that's just how a lot of my relationships have started. And at the same time, I recognize that that's not really like a system. That's not really a structure to it. And that now at this point in my business, 7 years in, I know a lot of dope people. And I'm always connecting people. And if I had just like a space where I knew people were excited or ready for collaborations, and that would actually make my life a lot easier and being able to connect people together, because it's hard to keep up with what everybody's doing. Now everybody's changing stuff. So I'm like, wait, what are you doing again? And how can I help you? So again, for me, it happened very, very organically. And I'm grateful that I just have a lot of really great friendships and business colleagues and stuff. But to do that, I've been cultivating it for 7 years, right? And no one really is trying to wait 7 years for much of anything. So I think that me going in the direction of creating and curating a really awesome group of people who are very value oriented and want to find audience matches, like that's exactly who I love to support.
And I love that you've systematized the process of finding collaborations, and we'll definitely talk more about that. But before that, could you share maybe what are some of the examples or some of the best collaborations that you've done as a business owner? And in terms of ROI, return on investment, could you share how the best ones grew your business?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Like I said, like you mentioned, I have done like 50 a year for the past 2 years for sure. But then I probably did like 30, 40 before that. And I would say again, there's a variety of collaborations and there's a vast way of doing it, but some that have been most fruitful are podcast interviews. So being on a podcast, talking about something specifically and having a specific call to action always will help support. And at this point, I think I've done like 180 podcasts across the 7 years. So quite a few. And you get better and better every time. Like if I went and listened to like the first guest podcast I ever did, I would cry because it probably was so awful. But guest podcasting is big for me. One that I also really enjoy is like guest teaching inside other people's communities. And this one is very interesting because I found that more than not, people get those opportunities because they are sharing a lot of content. And that's tough for a lot of people because, social media is, the angry algorithm, and, it feels like you're feeding into this like beast sometimes. However, because I share content fairly consistently, that is also how I get a lot of what I am offered as far as collaboration opportunities. Like, for example,
it's inbound because they know what you can do.
Exactly. They see the vastness, they see me teaching. And like, for example, I had I've been doing reels very consistently for probably a year and a half, 2 years now. And I was asked to speak on a stage about reels. I am not an Instagram person. Like I'm on Instagram, but I don't have a course or that's like not my thing, but I do it well. I get results from it. I get leads, sales, all the things. And that's what I care about. I don't talk about any metrics or virality or any of that. And so it's like, I mean, sure, I could talk about this. And I was just like, I'm not an Instagram person, right? And they're like, yeah, we know. And that's like why we actually want you to speak on it, is because your perspective on it is different than all of the Instagram experts that are out there. And I was like,
and you're not trying to sell or saying whatever just to sell an Instagram course, right?
Right. Like, it's just like, this is what I do and this is how I do it. And it was really awesome and refreshing and a really amazing talk. And that's when I realized that, again, yes, I'm doing, my marketing or different things for my clients and attracting people to do my services or my offerings, but it also is attracting other people who have an audience match to me and are like, oh, she's doing, she's sharing this here. I want her to share this deeper in my community. And what I think people are missing out on is the fact that, like, when you build your own audience community, could be email list, Instagram, it doesn't matter what it is, what that signals to somebody else in their community is that you're willing to put yourself out there and you're doing the courageous work. Let me put an asterisk here, because I recognize not everybody wants to build an audience, and that is okay. There's no shame in that at all. And if you are feeling friction in getting in front of other audiences and things like that, people who've built audiences and communities have put blood, sweat, and tears into that. And a lot of times, in my experience, they respect when you have also done the same. It doesn't have to mean that you have the same size of audience by any means, but just the fact that you're willing to show up for your own audience as consistently as you are, that lets them know that, like, they're the real deal. Like, they understand how important it is to love on and care on and nurture your people consistently. And so therefore I know that my people are in more good hands. And that's not something anybody has ever said to me. However, like, they haven't said, I've hired you because you show up consistently for your people. But in more ways than not, people have said, like, the way that you do things is refreshing, or, I continually see you level up, which means, again, I'm consistently showing up. And people are noticing that. And that's because I stay visible. So it's tough, because I try not to be in the space of, you have to be out there and you have to be super visible. And that does make finding and creating opportunities and collaborations with people a lot easier, I found.
It does. I know there's a lot of narrative these days about burnout and how that's caused by constantly having to be online and showing your face and creating content. And I think that certainly has a place for people who feel like that's not how they want to build business. But to the extent that you are willing to put yourself out there, collaborations, I think, are a great way to create evergreen content, like podcasts, like you've said. They seem to be the most effective for you. You do it once, you're pretty much saying the same thing every single time, but at the end of the day, it lives on and does the work for you, provided you've done the work to put out the right calls to action for your business.
Yep.
So when you talk about, or when you think about the ROI, then how have you found that it's grown your business in, kind of tangible ways?
Oh yeah. So we, not surprising because of the name of my business, but we track very intensely. It's tough because people are like, oh, like, I want to, like, learn your tracking system. I'm like, no, you don't.
Developed over a maze of 4 or 7 years.
Right. Like, it's even my systems gal is just like, your brain is something else. But I'm very consistent with tracking, and I want to know where people are coming from. I want to know how long they've been on my email list before they've joined something. I have all of that data, and it's really allowed me to make better decisions, because when I had done a day program for 3 years, I only had a roadmap, which was just like a freebie guide, a quiz, and like a $37 boot camp. That was it. I did not make any more lead magnets. People out here having 70 lead magnets out here in the world. I'm like, I don't even know how you keep track of that, but whatever. Like, I have 3 lead magnets, and for 3 years, literally 3 years, all I did was talk about VIP days, and I would share my lead magnets and people would flow through that. So when it came down to it and I looked at the data, pretty much every year, I knew that if somebody went through my freebie guide, that it would take them on average around 90 days to become a client inside Done in a Day. I knew that if they took the quiz, it would take 6 months. If they did the boot camp, it was even longer than that, which was my $37 offer. So the quickest conversion tool that I had was my virtual conference. And that was an average of 14 days of people who had never heard of me before and joined my list through buying a ticket for the virtual conference. It took them an average of 14 days to join my program. And that's why I did so many virtual conferences. It's like, well, this was nice. Like, this was, the best way to get people to join my program in the fastest way possible. That, I mean, I was going to do virtual conferences all the time. However, I was very, very intentional in understanding the nuance of, okay, this is my evergreen, kind of strategy. And then here's my launch strategy of the virtual conferences, and being able to map up my years, like, a lot easier, because it was just very simple. Every 6 months we have a virtual conference. In between virtual conferences, we've got these things going on, and it just worked like clockwork. And for me, results wise, in 2021 and 2022, I had a 1.2 and a $1.3 million year, because I was so diligent in, and Trina on my team who does all my scheduling, I was like, I'm not talking about anything but VIP days. So anybody asking me to talk about anything else, say no gracefully.
Focus.
Right? Focus. Focus on the fact that I didn't have to go out and create a bunch more lead magnets. I didn't have to create a bunch more shiny stuff, because my program was good. My conversion tools were good. And I knew kind of, again, the timelines of those. My entire job for 2.5 years was, how do I get people to take one of these 3 actions? And so I need to get in front of other people's audiences. And that is the quickest way to do it. I did dabble in some Facebook ads, but it was more for brand awareness. So the results were big. We have a database of like 19,000, but I pruned my list very, very intentionally. And so we have about like 6,000 or 7,000 that are considered active and that we actually talk to. So, it got me the leads I needed. It got me the sales that I wanted and that I was shooting for. But it takes extreme focus and discipline. And I was really proud of myself during that time, because it really showed me what I was capable of when I actually put my mind towards something, which was really cool. So yeah, the results have been pretty incredible.
Okay. So could you give us an idea of what types of collabs work best for product-based business versus service-based or education-based businesses?
Oh, yeah. So list swaps are so underrated. It's really interesting because...
What's a list swap?
Yeah. So a list swap is where, like, I have a freebie and you have a freebie and we share each other's freebies to each other's lists. It's very low commitment. It's very chill. We're not doing a whole launch and shebang and confetti. It's like we just are swapping. And I just did like a group swap recently, and it was interesting. So I sent, I think, 1 email and maybe a couple social media posts, and I brought in about 611 subscribers in a 2-week period. Now, 378 of those were new to my list. Again, I track what's going on. And so, but even still, like 378 people in a couple weeks is significant.
Yeah.
And I sent 1 email and a couple social media posts. And actually, one of the reels that I did for it got like over 500 comments on it. It had like 26% engagement. It was like wild. I was like, what's happening? But again, I know my audience well. I know what works. And so it's a matter of, and actually I spoke to the gal who was the leader of the list swap, the group swap, and she was like, you had the most clicks by far, like you had double the amount of the second person behind you.
Wow.
You had clearly one of the most engaged email lists because people had 8x, 10x, 12x the size of your list, and they had a tenth or like a 12th of like the results that you got, you know? So all these people out here talking about the big list, like it is not what you think. It's very much like you think like, oh, I want to go after the big names because they have these big lists. And some people have done well with their big lists, but majority of people have not. I'll tell you that right now. So I actually really enjoy email lists that are under 10K, which is funny because most people are not trying to do that. They're trying to go after those big fish. And I'm like, nah, like I would much rather go into these smaller, more intimate, more close audiences than, again, the big kind of overinflated opportunities. So I would say list swaps are very underrated. I would say that would be more for education type folks, more than likely. Service providers, great for podcasts. Definitely great for podcasts. And if you are a podcaster and that's like a part of your marketing strategy, even doing podcast swaps or podcast shout outs. So podcast swaps are very similar to list swaps where it's like, okay, we're on both of each other's podcasts and whatnot. And you can do even like what I call podcast parties, where it's like we do part one of a podcast on your podcast and we do part two of the podcast on mine. And so again, we're cross promoting each other's podcasts, which makes sense because podcasters are like, podcast listeners will listen to all the podcasts. So it's an easy way to get growth going. But then also the shout outs are cool because like at the very beginning, you can share an episode that you listen to on someone else's podcast and say, hey, you know, as you're listening to this, go to their podcast and click like download to this episode so you can listen to it next. And then someone else can do that for you. So some different podcast growth strategies, great for service providers. Also, if you're an education person as well. But I would say podcasting is probably the best for service providers, and more like email list oriented stuff is better for education type businesses.
What about
But
product-based
both are good.
businesses?
Product-based businesses, I think oddly enough, like social collaborations, like social media. So doing like a Reels collab or doing like different giveaways or whatnot. Those I've seen actually do really well for product-based businesses. Again, you can do like a coupon swap for each other's, you know, shops or things like that. And podcasting is okay. It really depends on what it is, what the product is you're doing. Like if you have a product for mothers or something, you could go on a mom swap podcast and like talk about it, and it probably would do well. But there are some that I would say if it's too niche of a product, then it may not do as well in podcasts.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for anyone who now sees the benefits and the importance of collaborations and they want to set one up for the very first time, where do we start with the whole collaboration thing?
Oh, yes. So there is a bit of readiness that is important. So number one, if you're looking to partner with people who are similar to me, I'm going to want to know your numbers. Like anytime that I do, not necessarily podcasts, but if I'm doing like list stuff, I will ask numbers because I know my list is awesome. Like I'm very aware. Every time I do a collaboration, everyone's like, oh my gosh, your list is awesome. And I take a lot of pride in that and I protect that. And so, you know, I don't want to be sending my people to other lists that are just spammy or just being in association with other people who don't have similar values to me. So I'm very particular and I'll ask questions, not because I'm trying to be rude, but because I'm protective and I'm intentional with my time and my audience. And my audience knows that and probably is why they trust me, you know, to be inside their inbox. So if you are someone who can't say, again, like your open rates, even simply, or if you are, again, doing like a group swap, like I just recently was in, but you are not aware of everyone's like data, right? And whatnot, then that's going to be tricky for me to say yes to. And so knowing your numbers is really, really key. If you do like joint venture webinars, you have to know your numbers. Every single person who you reach out to for a joint webinar is going to want to know every single number ever. They're going to know your registration conversion rate. They're going to want to know their show up attending rate. They're going to want to know your on webinar conversion rate, your follow up sequence conversion rate, all of that stuff. And so if that JV webinars are like the ultimate. So I would say probably don't start there. Start more with the podcasting, the list swaps, the social collaborations, because they're lighter lifts. They aren't as intense and whatnot. But I think that knowing your numbers, and then also from a standpoint of knowing your audience and their journey as well, because I know where my people are at. I survey them, I talk with them all the time, and I am very aware of what their needs are. And so for somebody to come in and say like, no, I don't know what an example would be. I don't know, PR. Like my audience doesn't really jive with PR. Not because PR is bad or anything like that. But I just have seen over the years that isn't something that my audience is that interested in. Not looking to focus on. They're more interested in relationships. They're more interested in techie tool stuff. They're more interested in brand and video shoots. That was a new one that popped up this last year that I was like, really? But I know those things about my audience. And so if you come to me and say, oh, I want to do a PR something, or even sometimes copy can be kind of hit or miss, then I'm not saying no because I don't see the value in what it is that you do. I'm saying no because I know my audience and I know that it's actually not going to convert, or it's not going to be beneficial or fruitful for either of us. And so being able to take the no's as actually being in support of like your overall goals, because again, a lot of us know our audiences and we're saying no because we already know that it's not going to convert because of what our people are saying that they need right now. Could change in a year, 2 years, whatever, right? As people evolve. But you have to get really good with like people saying no to you, which again, rejection is not fun, but it definitely is part of business, right?
No. And I think it shows integrity that, listen, I may benefit and you may not. And that's really not in the spirit of collaboration if it's going to be mutually beneficial. So take the no's as it's not about you. It's about whether or not we will work. But you've talked about Instagram being a great place for you to find people to collaborate with. Are there any other places that you'd recommend we go looking for people to collaborate with?
So I would say other places could be, well, if you're in a very professional sense, definitely LinkedIn, and going down that trail. I would say also, a lot of people will do articles or like roundup articles on like best podcasts of 2023 for women or for basketball players or for fitness people. And those are definitely good in the sense of, okay, I want to know like, and again, sometimes it is like the super bigger names, but sometimes they'll toss in some people that are in what I see to be a little bit more approachable. And so I will then reach out to them or start following them on Instagram for me and just start, replying to their stories or commenting on their posts and things like that, just to start the conversation. And so I would say roundup posts. So if you can literally type it in to Google or whatever and just say like, top podcasts for X, and 17 million articles will pop up. And then again, like LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook groups is one of those things that Facebook is an interesting place in general, but Facebook groups I found to be for more, if you're focused on targeting new business owners, then Facebook groups have those types of opportunities I found. But if you're focused more on like established entrepreneurs, then I wouldn't say that Facebook is probably the best place to reach them or to connect with them or to follow them over there.
So once you've established, okay, these are the people I want to collaborate with, what is the best way to craft your pitch so that you are more likely to get a yes
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's about the repetition, which is mostly not what people want to hear because they're like, I just want
Mm,
one and done. And I just want to send the one email. I I'm just one of those natural people that I think it's the fact that I grew up. I went to 12 different, I moved 12 times in my life. I've been to 3 different high schools. I just like bebopped.
mm,
And so I don't necessarily have the like shame of like going up to somebody and literally just starting a conversation
mm-hmm.
because I got to make friends when I'm
Yeah.
in middle school and high school. So this
Yeah.
is just what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't necessarily have that same nervousness that some people have. And I've recognized that. And so if you have that nervousness, then maybe this won't be helpful to you. But what I find is that um, a lot of times I start conversations with life stuff. Um, like I'll see if somebody has like a dog that's barking during their podcast interview. I'm like, yep, been there, and I'll comment that. Or I hear a clip from someone's podcast. I'm like, oh, that was really good. I'm going to share that to my stories. Or somebody is talking about being in Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know the best place to get chocolate cake. Here it is. Here's the address. Here's the name of it. Like you're going to want to take a cake home with you, like I did in a carry-on, and it's totally normal. Like, and I just have a way of connecting with people on life stuff that then is like, oh, like what's she got going on over there?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of going straight for the kill or whatnot, I tend to take a little bit more of like a life first approach on connection of just
Mm-hmm.
like, I recognize you're a human, I'm a human. Yeah, we got businesses and stuff, but I want to connect with you just as a human. And that's really provided me a lot more wins than like having the perfect pitch email. I've sent pitch emails 110%, but again, I still have started a conversation or started a connection point previous to that. So that way, again, they've never seen my name before. I don't want that to be the case
Mm-hmm.
at all. Right. So that's something I think a lot of people miss out on is just going for the pitches.
Mm-hmm.
And the pitch, you want to have some context with the pitch. Like you want people to have more to know about you than just what the words are in your email.
Mm-hmm.
So doing a couple of touches, where they're most active, is crucial to then the pitch actually being like, oh yeah, like she shared my thing, or oh yeah, we were talking about dogs or Paris or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
They
that's
actually
that's
recognize
helpful.
your name
Yeah.
in their subconscious. And even the
Yeah.
point about making sure that there's a human connection first, even if it's a cold pitch, I
Totally.
found in my experience, if you start with showing that you know something about them as a
Right.
person,
Yeah.
you're not just coming in, this is what I want, but you've shown, I took the time to research you and I understand who you are and what you
Yeah.
value. That is effective because it's flattering when people feel like
Yeah.
you've taken the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when you think about some of the red flags that you've steered clear of when you're, entering into collaborations, what would you say they are, just so we know
Mm-hmm.
that we are not going to step into something that we regret?
Right. Totally. I mean, I know this may sound obvious because I'm a systems person, but if you are disorganized, that's going to be something that will need to be worked on. Now, does that mean you need to have all your P's and Q's? Not necessarily. However, even simple things like I have a rule with Trina, if someone doesn't have a calendar scheduler for their podcast interview, I'm not doing it.
It speaks volumes. I don't want to go back and forth with you in email. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I'm not going to make Trina do it. And time zones
Hmm.
alone, I'm just like, no, who wants
Yeah.
to calculate this?
Yeah.
And people get it wrong, right? So it's just uh, thinking through the process of the collaboration. And if people are if you don't even have like forms for people to fill out and you're just like, answer these questions or reply back in an email, mm,
Mm.
cringe, like
Yeah.
nails on a chalkboard for me and for a lot of people. And so it's really crucial that you think about the experience that you want your collaborators to have. It's not just about client experience, there's also a collaborator experience. And when people have a good experience, they'll remember you and they will tell other people to collaborate with you. I get all the time, people are like, I was talking to so-and-so and they were a part of your virtual conference and they said it was like the best event that they've been a part of. And like, how do I become a part of that? Like, how can I get on a list for when you open up speaker stuff next or whatever? And that means a lot to me. I take that very, very deeply because I am intentional in that area. So not missing out on also the depth of the relationship you could have with somebody. There's people that I've collaborated with multiple times because of how easy it's been, because of how much they care and trust, So I think that it's something that not a lot of people think about because they're just like, in the humdrum of business and life. But again, that extra care can really go a long way. And I feel like that's what everybody says about everything. And it's hard to have the extra care about everything. And, something as important as ensuring that this person has a good experience with you, you have no idea what that one experience could branch into, right? It's not about just doing all of the new collaborations all the time. A lot of it is, okay, I'm doing these different collaborations and there's a few people that I am consistently doing collaborations with because of the relationship, because of the experience that you have with them. So don't miss out on the repeat collaboration opportunities just to like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, people,
Right. I'm also curious, is there a way to validate the numbers people are sharing with you? Because people could say almost anything, I'm a trust but verify type of person.
I know it, man. Oh gosh. Okay, so because even in the world of online stuff, there's a lot of screenshot Photoshop going on. And so that one is tough. That one I think is more reliance on your gut than necessarily being able to verify anything, unfortunately. Now, could you get on someone's email list and get their vibe and whatever else? Sure. Because again, I could take a screenshot of my 19,000 database and be like, yeah, I got 19,000 people. And it would be true.
Right.
But no, I'm going to say I have 6,000 or 7,000 active people because I'm in integrity and that's literally the amount of people I'm emailing. So I think that's where you got to kind of almost train your gut to really understand what people are saying. I think that if people are and that's why a lot of times I pretty much say no if there's any like requirement of number of email list or number of Instagram followers or number of whatever, because I know what the intention is behind that. And that doesn't make them a bad person. But for me, I know that, like, again, I don't even really want to be in the 10K plus email list or the 5K plus or whatever it is. Like, I just want to, like, I want you to think of the people you're bringing in as very value oriented. And I know the numbers are going to show up. Like, I just have trust in that. So any sort of, again, I don't want to say that it's bad or wrong for people to have requirements because maybe that's what their business needs. However, that's something that as a values first person, I'm more than likely going to say no, just on that sole fact.
And there's so many underlying things that people don't realize, that the larger your audience size, the more diluted it gets, and the lower your conversion rate and all these things. So vanity metrics really aren't going to get you anywhere in the long run.
They're not.
But we've also talked about the fact that you're a systems person. So when it comes to systems and processes to have in place, just to make sure that you have the best possible experience, what are like the top 3 key processes that we should have in place?
Oh yes. Calendar scheduler number 1. Like that is, I cannot. And Trina is a buffer with my calendar scheduler because people will keep my calendar scheduler and then try and add to it. So it's been a balance now of like, okay, I don't know if we need a passcode to this that we change or what, which is kind of wild to think about. But Trina does a good job of managing that. But calendar scheduler for sure. Number 1, whether it's for coffee chats or sales calls or podcast interviews, it doesn't matter. Please have a calendar scheduler. Please, please, please. That's number one. Number two is looking at your processes of onboarding. I think are really, really crucial because it's the first experience that people have of you. And so, not there's a bunch of different ways you could set up your onboarding, but what I found to be of most help is like walking people through and having a very beginner's mindset with your onboarding, where it's like, this person is working for you with you for the first time. We know that you've done this service 1,100 times, but this is the first time they're doing it. And sometimes people's like knowledge bias gets in the way because they're like, oh, they obviously know this language, or they obviously know where to find this analytics number that I need. And it's like, no, they really don't. Right. And so, because people don't like to feel dumb. And so if you're making them feel inferior or whatnot at the very beginning of the relationship, it's not gonna start off well for you, just in general. That would be number two. Number three is really good follow-up. So I will say that I am a pretty diligent follow-upper.
I like it.
And whatnot. Don't quote the fact that I'm a journalism major, but I think that people always think, oh, I let them know once, or they saw it once and like they're good.
No. Nope.
Literally biggest lie we tell ourselves, because even as somebody who has intentions to do things, it's like, okay, I'm distracted by this over here, distracted by this over here. And I need those reminders. And it sounds ridiculous because you're like, okay, you don't want to babysit anybody. But also in the current context of the world that we're in, coming out of pandemic where we were all at home, there was a lot less activity from a sense of like having to go out and about, like even, kids' basketball games or school. Like I realized I'm like, I spend so much time in the car now. Like, what is happening? And I'm like, oh, it's because not stuck home anymore. Right. So, it's a change in everybody's daily routines. And so instead of feeling like, oh, I'm having to chase people per se, like who doesn't love a good reminder of something you were planning to do anyway?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like it's a form of love and care. It's like, oh yeah, they remembered the fact that I wanted to do this. Right. Because again, there's a lot going on. So a great follow-up process for any of your sales and stuff is super important.
I don't know where I heard this, but there is the greatest return you can get when whether it's sales or pitching for whatever opportunities, the greatest return you get is on the follow-up email. And I can attest to that personally. Some of my best podcast interviews have come after 2 years of follow-up, reschedule, follow-up. And then after 2 years, phenomenal opportunity to collaborate, right? So follow up is absolutely necessary. So before we head out, I definitely want to talk about Ready, Set, Collab and the fact that you have used AI in order to streamline the process of collaborating. So could you share a little bit about the tool and the process and the system you've built around collaboration?
Oh, yes. So it's a very interesting intersection to be in when you love all things automation and also love humans. It's kind of the big debate right now, right? Of like, don't lose the human touch, but save yourself a bunch of time. And it seems like it's at odds a lot of times. And I will say that I am in the camp of, I'm not here to create automatic opportunities that remove you from actually having a relationship with somebody. Those things I'm uninterested in. What I am interested in and what I've built and am continuing to build with Ready, Set, Collab, which is my collaboration network of, again, established online entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses through collaboration. So finding and securing collaborations, we want to make it as easy as possible and spend less time in that part and more time in the interviews or in the actual collaborations. So we have built some AI tools, some micro apps where there's one that we've created where you can take your information and someone else's information, and the AI will actually show you opportunities to collaborate, which is really cool. So instead of you being like, okay, I have this, they have this, let me think about how we could like incorporate, it's just like, again, all of that thinking time, we can at least quick start you into like, oh, like this actually could be a way that we collaborate that is either unique or could be, again, extra valuable for us that I wouldn't have thought of necessarily. So that's one way we're using AI, is in the idea generation phase between you and one other person, and your expertise and how you like to collaborate. And then another one is in the pitch email side. So you can put in your information, you can put in a podcast you're looking to be on, or an event you're looking to speak at, or whatever the case is, and a little bit of information about the host, and it will spit out a pitch email that, again, shows you kind of where you can add some connection. And then the rest of it is like pretty good to go, and whatnot. So, those are a couple of the tools, but we're continually looking at, again, because people spend a lot of time in the space of like, okay, what should I do? How should I approach this? All like that is a lot of time and space and energy and mental capacity. And we want to cut that down because we want you to spend as much time in the human side, in the connection side. So that's kind of where our intersection is. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty delightful when you can literally create opportunities and tools that gain people time back, which has always been my thing with systems, right? We only have so much time. We only have so much energy. So those are a few of the AI things that I'm playing around with, which have been really fun.
I'd love to hear a quick success story that's come out of your platform so far.
Yeah. So there's one gal, Rachel Cook, who she has a podcast. She's been in business for quite a while, like 15 years. And she came in because she had worked with PR people previously for about a year and a half, and was, I think, $2,500 to $3,000 a month. And there was no guarantee, right, of being able to land anything. And so she's spending all this money, and she would get a couple, podcasts here and there and whatever else. But then she came into the Ready, Set Collab network and got 10 collabs immediately. Like within the first month. And I was like, okay, first of all, whoa, Nelly. Second of all, like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And, you get to spread them out, across as far as execution and implementation. But it just goes to show again that, PR people are for what they are for. And when you get back to the basics of relationships, like collaborations can happen very, very quickly. When you are in the right space and when you know that somebody else is interested in doing a collab, that's also the second part of it. When you're going out in the ether, it's like, are they even open to this?
Right.
Like, am I wasting my energy and my time? When you're in Ready, Set, Collab, every single person wants to collaborate. So like now it's just determining if it's the right fit to collaborate.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go through the rigmarole of, are they open to it? Are they not open to it? Like, am I wasting my energy? So yeah, that's been a fun success story for sure, of just like, for a 10th of the monthly costs that she had way more of an ROI on being able to get these collaborations.
I love it. I love it. So for anyone who does want to connect or be a part of Ready, Set, Collab, where can we find you? How can we get in touch?
Totally. So head on over to readysetcollab.com. It'll either be a wait list or doors open. So depending on the time that you're going to check this out, it will be one or the other. So if doors are open, come on in. If it is the wait list, then make sure to add your name to it, and you'll be the first to know when our doors open again next. So that's probably the easiest way right now.
If you found my conversation with Jordan helpful, I want you to know we have over 190 similar audio episodes available on she'soffscript.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else audio episodes are available. With that, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell on your way out so you don't miss our next episode. I share new ones every Thursday. Bye.